There will be plenty. Excuse me just a second. If you have any ideas that you don't have time to write down, just send an email to me. You hear it, you get the emails from me all the time. So just send an email to me, and we'll take any ideas that you have. And anything in the next week would be fabulous. And because in about a week and a half, we'll get together and summarize everything and pull together all the ideas, and that will be the time that we'll be thinking about how do we go forward for the next year. So thank you very much for doing that. One thing I forgot to do, remember the annual report? I think you've all seen a copy of the annual report. You've all been given a copy. The picture of the wind turbine on the cover is from University of Minnesota Morris. So thank you, Jackie. Okay, one question that's come up, and I'd like to ask this of all the panelists. How do you deal with the challenges that you get either internally in your university or externally about, is this a fad? I don't believe the science. The naysayers. How do you deal with those issues? Because we all get it all the time, and I think all the schools everybody that's trying this is facing it. So, anybody want to address that question? Jackie?
I'd like a chance just to comment on it. As I was listening to us, and as I've been listening to us, I'm thinking about some of the people in our rural community, and I'm also thinking about a big billboard that you see as you drive from the west into the Twin Cities, into Minneapolis, and maybe this appears in other parts of the country, but it has Al Gore's face on it, and it says Al Gore is a liar, and then it has a website that we can visit, which I haven't done yet, but I think in the best interests of liberal learning and critical thinking, I need to do that. But I guess what I worry about is that we do get a little bit too comfortable listening to ourselves, and applauding ourselves in our wisdom, and that's not to challenge the science of this in any way. But I thought that something that you said, Ron, was really important, and what I've seen in our community does have to do with the business plan. And while it may not be the case that every farmer in our rural location is as convinced of global warming as some of us are, what they do understand and respond to, and some of them are really concerned about climate and climate changes, as you pointed out, David, when we were talking, they see it more directly than many of the rest of us do. But what does matter is that we're putting about $500,000 back into the local economy every year with the biomass plant. And so the farmer who called up one of my colleagues after we went out for bids for corn stover for the biomass plant to see if he'd gotten the bid may not be an advocate for the same things that we are necessarily or up front, but was really excited that he'd gotten the bid because he can go out and buy a new baler. And so I mentioned that point. I've always wanted everybody to believe in the same things that I do, to be righteous and morally on high ground, of course. But I've sort of given that up in my old age, and thinking that even if people don't believe as I do, if we're affecting the same ends, that there is some good in that. So I think your comments about the business plan and finding the right ways to speak to people about what we're doing, and in the case of the rural economy, I really believe, and many of us do, that there's a renaissance, and I know many of you are urban and you're not rural, but we do see power shifts, and we do have resources that you aren't going to be able to capture and control, at least not right now, in the cities in the same way that we can do on the prairie, and wind is one of those resources. So I think there are naysayers, and I think, of course, we confront that with information and education in all of the right venues, because that's our role and that's our mission. But I think we also pay attention to the things that matter to people, to the farmers. It's earning a living for their families, and paying attention to the business plans that underwrite the work that we're doing seems really, really important to me in bringing lots of groups of people along.
David, you want to?
I think Jackie's made a really good point, and I think the science, if you simply ask people involved in IPCC, is the science in dispute? The answer is no, not in the main. There are a lot of small things that are yet to be discovered or resolved, the effect of clouds, for example. There are a few things like that, but they don't change the overall picture much. At the end of IPCC process, as the fourth report was released last year, the head of the IPCC said, we've come to you 4 times. It's like going to the doctor 4 times and, hey, you got to go on a diet. And if you don't, we can continue to refine your cholesterol numbers, but it doesn't matter. The big picture is there. Personally, I don't really want to spend time debating climate with the few remaining skeptics, and they are diminishing every day. That's not a good use of time. I think Jacqueline's point is really essential. On this issue, it's peculiar and very important, I think, in this way, that there are the right things to do about climate, and then there are the economically, quote, smart things to do, and they converge on the same set of solutions. Energy efficiency is good for all kind of reasons. Renewable energy is good for all kinds of reasons, and rebuilding the local economy. So in some ways it doesn't really matter if there are naysayers out there, and I don't think we ought to take time to spend much time trying to engage them. The science will do that. The relentless working out of the big numbers and the science, that's already in process. I think we just simply get down to work.
Thank you. Michael?
I think I would just add that I concur with the earlier comments. The tipping point has been reached. The fact that others now refer to the opposition as liars, I mean, that sort of says the whole story right there. And so you don't even need to worry about that. I mean, at least from our perspective, we found in the business community the opposite of resistance. We found only people that embrace what we're working on. We found funding. We found investment. Groups that want to work with what we're doing with the broader community of the utilities. Our local utility just announced a 400-megawatt solar plant that will be followed by 3 additional 400-megawatt solar plants for 1.6 gigawatts of solar, molten salt. So the tipping point has been reached and has been exceeded. I think the way to engage these things, even with people who are doubting Thomases or skeptical about this or that, is to say, okay, well, forget about that. What about this problem? And so for us, we then drag in the local issue or the local problem. So we have nighttime heat increases of 10 degrees in the last 20 years, going up half a degree per year. So that at night in the summer, it may never get below 100 degrees. Would you like that? What's the outcome of that? And once you start teaching from the local to what's going on more broadly, all of a sudden it just fades away. I mean, it literally fades away. On the political front, there certainly are, and I appear before our legislature often and then get entangled occasionally for taking roles like this, chairmanship of this group and other things. And so certain people will try to beat me up on other things, but it turns out that they never have enough critical mass. They don't have enough votes. They just have a yik-yak. And so they just they'll say this, and I'll say, well, appreciate your opinion. We're moving forward anyway, and here's what we're doing. So you just sort of move ahead.
Ron, do you have any?
Just very quickly. There's 2 things we really try to do. One, our communication system is really outstanding, and so we do all kinds of things. From in parades, the colleges join the Green Movement. When we have county fairs, we're part of the Green Movement, question and answers, green T-shirts. I mean, a lot of those kinds of things. The green tip that comes out every week at the college. But in addition to that, when we did our initial kickoff at the college, we also tapped into the resources of the University of Minnesota main campus to talk about this particular issue. And like Michael said, you've always got a few of those doubters out there, but we did address that. The other thing we did is kind of interesting, though. We did open it up with some community forums and brought in Will Steger, who is in our area, who's an Arctic explorer, on Sunday evenings about the global warming. And I was really surprised. Sunday nights, raining or snowing, and you get 750 to 800 people. But we did get those skeptics that were in there, and we just dealt with them. And I don't know whether that was good or bad, but we dealt with them. So,
it seems to me that one of the reasons that you get people being skeptical about any new major change is fear of the unknown. A fear that somehow this is going to disrupt my way of life, somehow it's going to be made more difficult, and I'm just barely managing things as they are today, and don't ask me to do something really different. And so to the extent that we can help people see what you all been talking about, different ways of about better ways to meet our needs, for better ways for jobs, better ways for the economy, better ways of solving other problems, then that's going to help move forward. And that's where I think we in higher education can make a really big difference, because we can help people see a different perspective. A question that came up over and over again is the question of what new leadership skills and approaches is required by a logic rooted in sustainability. Michael or anybody else, want to address that?
I don't know that it's so much a leadership skill. It's just important that academic institutions, community colleges, universities, regional colleges, private colleges, whatever they happen to be, it doesn't make any difference, that they actually decide that there's something other than a amalgamation of a series of independently minded individuals who can do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want to do it. You still want to have a situation where people have that freedom to exercise their own agenda, but you have some collective purpose. And so it's just finding a way to pursue that collective purpose, and that requires leadership at all levels of the institution. We've certainly seen it in our students, large numbers of students heavily engaged in these issues, large numbers of students coming in, about 30% of our incoming freshmen. We had 150,000 inquiries about enrollment at the institution. We had almost 50,000 applications. And so you look at then how many of them think that sustainability is an important issue in where they're going. Talk about leadership, more than 35% of those students think that. And so it's about leadership from students, leadership from the administration, leadership from faculty, deciding that we're here for a broader set of reasons also. Not in lieu of, but in addition to. And so that's worked for us anyway.
Okay. Jackie?
Can I just add something? I've been at a couple of meetings in the last week, earlier this week at the Minnesota Campus Compact meeting, and I've heard some recurring themes, and I think it really relates to what you're saying, Michael, and what I've observed. People are talking, I think, more about the way in which organizational structure impedes rather than advances progress. And I think I'm going to say something that may be a little bit out of turn here, out of school, but in some ways I think you see that nowhere more powerfully than at the University of Minnesota. And I apologize to all of my colleagues there, but I don't think they disagree with me. It's like Arizona State. It's a huge institution, all kinds of organizational units in the Twin Cities and around the state, and it's really, really hard for people to work together. And I think what seems to be working, however, is I think what you were talking about, and that is for people just to ignore those bureaucratic structures. What we see in our small town is a unit of the University of Minnesota that's connected to the agricultural school that doesn't report through or to the University of Minnesota Morris. We have the USDA Soils Lab, and we formed something called the Green Prairie Alliance. It's really nothing. It's just a name, but it provides an opportunity to name something and to go after grants. And the reason I think that Morris has been able to progress in the way that it has, and I take no credit for it at all because I'm really very new to the institution, so I always feel like I can brag in a kind of unabashed way, is because there are people with vision at those three research, if you will, entities that are unrelated structurally and bureaucratically, who have just said, who cares? And we're going to work together because we have this common vision, and we're going to move forward. I know it isn't always that simple, but I think it's a recurring theme here as well, that we can't take for granted that the old structures are going to serve us well. And when they don't, then I think it is the right time to take some permission and to move outside of them and to work collectively and collaboratively with other entities and to figure out kind of along the side of it how you make these things work legally. Our partnership with the Mille Lacs Band is one of those pieces. It takes not only attorneys from the University of Minnesota but also wind attorneys who are outside of the University of Minnesota to figure out how to form a legal partnership with a sovereign nation, the Ojibwe group. So, it is possible, but I think working and assuming that we can only work within the existing structures is not going to get us where we need to be. So people do need to be a little risk-taking, I guess, and even uppity in their willingness to move ahead.
David?
If we had been, let's say, in a room like this in the year, 1760, and said, let's go out and watch the Enlightenment happen, where would you go? The Enlightenment was letters and books being traded between Diderot and Montesquieu and so forth, but it was happening. And I had this sneaking suspicion there's a whole lot happening now that is leadership in the electronic era with young people like Billy Parrish, and you've got them on your campus and so forth. And as a page turner, a book reader, it's hard for me to see the enlightenment that is now unfolding around us, but I think it's there. And I think it's happening on the web and the viral marketing and all these things that I really don't understand, but a lot of young people really do. And as far as the skills of leadership, I think there are a lot of kids now stepping into this vacuum that our generation created and doing some amazing things. But we don't see it. It'll be invisible to a lot of us for a long time.
Ron?
We've had a number of successes at our college. It's interesting, but I don't think there's been anything that has been as successful and as exciting as this one. We're the only two-year college I mentioned a little bit earlier involved with the nanotechnology program. We have a major contract with General Motors, which covers, there's about 17 of them in the United States, a new entrepreneurship program. But this one, for some reason, and maybe it's because we did it differently, I don't know, because it impacts every facet, every element, every program. But I've never seen faculty leadership in a collective bargaining unit just rise to the top on this. So our interior design faculty, our landscape horticulture folks, electricians, our automotive transportation people are all joining together. And it's just been absolutely wonderful to see that.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Just a quick comment on the question of impact. One of the challenges I think we face as a society is many of the impacts that could be negative are invisible to us. So, for example, you don't see the carbon footprint when you buy something. My little laptop computer took about 3,000 pounds of materials, all of which went to waste before I ever got the computer itself. And this all happened someplace else in the world. The fossil fuels came from someplace else, the metals came from someplace else, and it happened someplace else in the world. It's been invisible. So part of what we can do as educational institutions is to make the invisible visible. And that leads to an important comment about I like to say that communication is to sustainability as location is to real estate. We know the most important characteristics of real estate are location, location, and location. This is really about having different kinds of conversations and actually illuminating all kinds of impacts and effects that have occurred that we don't see on a day-to-day basis. So I think this has been extremely useful. We got a few minutes left, and I want to ask another couple of quick questions that people have had, which is, all right, I think we've covered most of the ones that people have been asking about. One question that seems to come up from everybody is, what assignments do all of us presidents have from this conference so that when we meet next year, we have something to report? Anybody want to take that? Yeah.
Well, what I can say from our perspective, one of our issues in meeting the carbon neutrality objective is the complexity of doing that in a high-growth institution. So, we've added 7 million square feet in the last 5 years. We've got another 20 million square feet to build to get to where we need to be. And how do you meet these objectives and do all the things that you're doing? So from my perspective, it's, everybody getting together a year from now and saying, well, how are we doing and what did you learn, and learning from each other. And so it's basically finding a way to get in and learn as much as possible from each other. How's it? We hired Aramark as our food service provider, and it's a huge institution. We fired the guys that wouldn't talk about sustainability. Well, I don't know if the Aramark guys are in the room or not, but did they deliver? What did they deliver? How did it work? What did it cost? Did it actually, in the new ways of buying food and the new ways of dealing with waste and the new ways of moving the institution forward, what have we changed? We're building a sustainable living and learning environment for 1,800 students. Well, how did that work, and what did we learn from that, and so forth. And so it's just really just getting together and learning from each other a year from now, so that we certainly don't have anything but just a fraction of the ideas or a fraction of the answers. How can we all help each other? We can't do this alone. It's too complicated. It's too big.
I don't know if this is exactly an answer to the question, but one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, not just here, but also having been here, is how important the people who are in charge of facilities and operations are. And I've had the opportunity over the course of the last day to meet a few of you who are here, and I'm so impressed. And I'm so impressed that the things that are happening on my campus wouldn't be possible without the kind of visionary that we have in charge of facilities and operations, who is probably one of the best, by the way, mentors for our students, and who sponsors them in research projects. And so I'm thinking, just as we think about next time and getting together, I wish that we could clone Lowell Rasmussen, who is the Vice Chancellor in charge of our facilities and finance. I don't think that's possible yet. I think there are others like him in this room. And to me, one of the things that could be really important sort of in future endeavors is to showcase those officers of our institutions who are leaders who really get this stuff in ways that I'm pretty sure I never will, even though I've worked and will continue to work really hard to learn about all of these things. But I think somehow, not only reporting on what we're accomplishing and doing, because I think it's so exciting when I listen to all of you, but also finding a way to showcase those people who I think are really the ones who can move us ahead and who understand the technology and have the connections and speak the language of the corporate engineering world and can make these things happen. So that that would be one other idea that I just think would be really, really important in a practical way for people like me who come into this as institutional leaders, but who really don't know what ESCOs are and steam turbines and chillers and how all those things connect together. And that's really where I think some of the significant changes are going to happen. Certainly also in curriculum. I don't mean to minimize any of that, or community partnerships, but it's the stuff of our institutions and the infrastructure. I think we could all benefit from some kind of focus on that.
David?
I think first of all, I'm not a college president, but some of my best friends are. So it's presumptive to say what you all ought to do. But let me say something that I think Tony and Michael have said, things that are really critically important. And this is not oppositional to anything that's been said. There are the necessary technical changes on the campus that have to do with operations and energy and resource flows and all of that. But at the end of the day, that's not going to be nearly enough. We've got to change lots more. We have to, as Aldo Leopold once put it, we still have to improve that still unlovely human mind. And when Michael talked about accountability, there's a whole nother conversation to have about what are we doing in a university. We are complicit with a lot of the problems that we aim now to address under this umbrella of sustainability. So I'd like to propose that along with, or as you go through all the technical things that are relatively easy to measure, and you can produce outcomes assessments and so forth, those are the technical things, that you figure out how also to sponsor a debate to change who has lunch with whom on your campus, to get at the kind of discussion that Tony described when he put this as a civilizational crisis, Michael described as a problem of accountability, but you change the conversation on the campus. This is a big issue. And in a lot of ways, one final thing, it's like bringing a patient into the emergency room in the hospital. The first thing you have to do is stabilize vital signs. That's all the technical things. But there is another discussion about how did you get into the mess in the first place. And that's much more vague, harder to measure. But it is the intellectual vitality of the campus. And if we cannot talk about those deeper issues, about the causes and root origins of sustainability on our campuses, where will our societies have that conversation? It won't be in Congress. It won't be in corporate boardrooms. It's not likely to be in the media. It has got to be on your campuses and mine in this country and all around the world.
Ron, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I would just say that, when the University of Florida, I'm sorry I can't recall his name, but I was just so impressed with your presentation and what you had to share. I mean, I learned so many things. And then, Larry, I just talked to you a little bit earlier today from the LA district. those are powerful presentations, and I agree with Jackie. I mean, next year I would hope that I could extend the invitation to maybe my facilities director to come and maybe a faculty team to hear some of this discussion, because those are the folks that really are going to really carry the ball for this, and they're really knowledgeable.
That's great. Thank you very much. A couple of thoughts. One is I want to mention that I mentioned yesterday that the higher education associations like APASCUP, NACUBO, and NAEP, several of the presidential associations have come together and formed a consortium to promote sustainability in their own through their own associations, to make it possible for the facilities managers to be hearing on a regular basis from APA about ways that they can embrace sustainability. And all these organizations are working on ways to build it into their professional development, into their conferences, the way they run their conferences, the publications. And it's been really terrific. They've been putting on webinars, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. One is that APA is coming out with a detailed guide on how to implement the President's climate commitment for facilities managers. And that'll be done by the fall. And they've been doing it by working with 25 or 30 of the best facilities managers in the country. NACUBO is going to be doing a report on new methods of financing sustainability initiatives on campuses. And that's going to be, hopefully, they're going to initiate that in July, and by the end of the year we'll have that. So there are some things like that are going on. SCUP has an annual, has been, for the last 5 years, has put on the Campus Sustainability Day, in which they have a major webcast, broadcast to colleges and universities around the country, and we're taking it to another level now, where we hope that this will be the day in October of every year that the campuses will focus on sustainability and bring together people, teams on the campuses to do, in essence, what they tend to do at Earth Day. But this is focused on what the campuses can do on the broader issues of sustainability, not just about the environment. So we think that those are some effective things that are going on, and I just want you to know that all the associations are working together to promote this, and it's really important. And Deborah is the co-chair of this effort with me, and we're really pleased to have that be the case. Can we have the themes? Okay. Thank you for all your comments. Here's some of the themes of what support do you need. Again, just reiterating what we just heard from our panelists. Provide the practical resources like best practices, success stories and case studies, news briefs, and specific technology recommendations and reviews. And that's what ASHE is attempting to do with its whole technical support program. Share examples of specific challenges and how to overcome them, like how to address resistance to curriculum reorientation, or how to access needed resources. Again, that's a really important one. Back to the issue that, we can do everything as colleges and universities to reduce the ecological footprint of our institutions, but the ultimate impact, as Michael Crow has said so eloquently, we have 100% of the educational footprint. We're responsible for the mindset that occurs in society. So what we teach and how we teach it becomes extremely important. Provide updates and information on relevant state and federal legislation, which I'm happy to hear is an important idea. Provide financial information and analysis like how to access funding and how to evaluate return on investment for emissions reduction activities and how to do performance contracting effectively. Again, Apple will be dealing with some of that in its guide, and the NACUBO study will be extremely helpful in that regard as well. But this is great. You're giving us some very specific suggestions. A third, another one. Several of you said we need a Michael Crow membership program, one-on-one experiences for small groups at the presidential level. How do you deal with these issues? So one of the things that I'd like to ask you to do in the remaining minute is to say, do you want to have another summit like this a year from now? What do we want it to do? We'd be particularly interested if you can just jot down when you think we should have one, and whether or not we should have we have it as a mixed group of people with presidents and facilities managers and senior vice presidents and maybe provosts, or do you need to have a time that's just presidents only, so you can just discuss the ability to actually help you with your peers, learn from each other on the major institutional step forward that we need to make. So if you could just write that into the co-vision stuff, that would be extremely helpful to us. Also, a good time of year. And what we'd like to do is, if we're going to have a summit again, we want to schedule it now, a year in advance, so we don't run into graduations, board meetings, reunions, and all kinds of other stuff. And I know that's really hard to do anyway, but that would be extremely important. Okay, one quick announcement is that Deb Johnson, a package has been delivered to you at the registration desk, and also wanted to just say it's time for a break, and I just want to thank the panelists. Thank you very much. You've really given us a great perspective, and it's been really terrific.